Robert Downey Jr. recently talked about the possibility of suiting up as Iron Man again in the MCU. After being the face of Marvel for so long, he hung up the suit in Avengers Endgame back in 2019. But hey, never say never in the superhero world, right? With all this talk of the multiverse, there's a chance we might see him again. And RDJ himself seems pretty open to the idea, saying it's practically in his DNA. So who knows? Maybe Tony Stark's not done with the MCU just yet. In a chat with Jodie Foster for Variety's Actors on Actors series, Robert Downey Jr. dropped a hint that he's not ruling out a return as Iron Man. He talked about how much he relates to Tony Stark, saying it's practically a part of who he is. Even though he's hung up the suit after 3 standalone movies and 4 Avengers flicks, he's keeping the door open for more. Here's a snippet of their convo. Jodie Foster: would you think of putting the suit back on for Tony Stark? RDJ: it's just crazily in my DNA. Probably the most like-me character I've ever played. Even though he's way cooler than I am, I've become surprisingly open-minded to the idea. With RDJ ready to come back, the question is how RDJ could return to the MCU as Iron Man after Tony Stark's death. The potential hiccup with RDJ reprising his role as Iron Man is how it might affect Tony Stark's impactful sacrifice in Avengers Endgame. But fear not, there are ways around this dilemma. Marvel doesn't necessarily have to resurrect Iron Man to bring Downey back into the mix. In the comics, Tony's legacy lived on through an AI version of himself, which could easily be explored in Marvel's upcoming Ironheart series and movies. If the AI route doesn't tickle Marvel's fancy, they could always tap into the multiverse for Iron Man's comeback. With 2 Avengers movies slated for 2026 and 2027, especially Avengers Secret Wars, there's ample opportunity to introduce multiverse versions of our beloved heroes. This opens the door for Downey to portray alternate versions of Iron Man, sidestepping any potential interference with the events of Avengers Endgame. Marvel Studios could also revisit the time travel angle, just like they did in Avengers Endgame. This clever plot device could bring RDJ back into the fold as Iron Man without cheapening Tony Stark's poignant sacrifice. Picture this: Downey's Iron Man could be plucked from an earlier moment in the MCU timeline, giving fans a nostalgic glimpse of the character he embodied for years. There's buzz about the original Avengers crew reuniting for at least Avengers Secret Wars, and RDJ's recent comments about Iron Man only fuel the speculation of his return. So with time travel shenanigans on the table, who knows? We might just see Iron Man suit up once more alongside his superhero pals. The MCU has faced a villain conundrum, especially in one aspect of its lineup, but Iron Man 4 could be the fix it needs. Since kicking off with Iron Man in 2008, Marvel Cinematic Universe has introduced a slew of baddies straight from the comic book pages. While some, like Loki, have become fan favorites, others have left something to be desired. Iron Man's impact on the MCU is still felt today, both on and off screen. From rising out of obscurity to becoming a pop culture icon, Tony Stark's absence post-Endgame seems to have left a void in the hearts of fans, as evidenced by recent box office disappointments. But while Iron Man himself is dearly missed, the same can't be said for his lineup of villains, which unfortunately fall short compared to other MCU foes. When it comes to multi-movie Avengers and their adversaries, Iron Man's villains seem to have drawn the short straw. His journey in the MCU kicked off with a bang, introducing us to the menacing Obadiah Stane and the shadowy Ten Rings organization. But sadly, things took a downward turn from there. Iron Man 3 in particular muddled the waters and its portrayal of the Ten Rings, leaving fans scratching their heads. Thankfully, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings later gave the group a much-needed revamp in Phase 4. As for Iron Man himself, he faced off against underwhelming foes like Whiplash, Aldrich Killian, and the unexpected twist with Trevor Slattery. Even the charismatic Justin Hammer was relegated to comic relief in Iron Man 2, robbing him of his potential as a formidable adversary. When you compare Tony Stark's rogues gallery to those of his fellow Avengers, it's clear he drew the short straw in the villain department. Just look at Steve Rogers, who squared off against iconic adversaries like Red Skull and the Winter Soldier, not to mention the ominous presence of Hydra lurking in the shadows. Then there's Thor, who faced off against the formidable Hela and the menacing Gore, both of whom left a lasting impression on fans. Even the Guardians of the Galaxy, with their quirky lineup, faced off against foes that seemed larger than life, almost godlike in their power. Unfortunately, Tony's adversaries didn't quite measure up in terms of memorability or sheer terror, leaving Iron Man with a less than stellar lineup of foes to contend with. The Iron Man trilogy certainly took some creative liberties when it came to its villains. One notable departure was the Mandarin, a classic Iron Man baddie who got a major makeover in the films. And let's not forget about Killian, who was a relatively minor character in the comics, but got a spotlight in the movies. Even Whiplash, while based on a comic character, was quite a departure from his iconic father. But fear not, there's still plenty of untapped potential in Iron Man's rogues gallery. Take young Anton Vanko, for example, who made a brief appearance in Marvel Television's Agent Carter. With a bit of adaptation, he could make for a compelling adversary in the MCU. It's a shame that Crimson Dynamo, one of Iron Man's classic adversaries, never got the chance to shine in the MCU. The confusion surrounding Anton Vanko's identity in the films seems to have left this iconic villain on the sidelines. While Anton Vanko was portrayed as Whiplash's father in the MCU, the Crimson Dynamo mantle remains untouched. Despite making an appearance in the Iron Man 2 tie-in video game, which isn't considered MCU canon, it's clear that there's potential to weave Crimson Dynamo into the narrative. With his history of abusing Stark's tech and his formidable presence, he could add a new layer of complexity to Iron Man's cinematic adventures if given the chance. Here's hoping that someday the Crimson Dynamo gets his moment to shine on the big screen. The saga of Arno Stark, Tony's long-lost brother, is certainly intricate, but it's a storyline that could still find its way into the MCU's expansive narrative. Arno's backstory involves being the biological son of Maria and Howard Stark, hidden away and replaced with the adopted Tony. Imagine the shock and intrigue if Tony were to stumble upon his hidden sibling. Initially, the brothers might even team up, with Arno's brilliance matching Tony's own. But as tensions rise, Arno could take a darker turn, appropriating his brother's technology and assuming the Iron Man mantle for himself. Such a twist would definitely shake up the established Iron Man lore and provide a fresh angle for a potential Iron Man 4 storyline. Another one is Zeke Stane. He certainly has the potential to step into his father's villainous footsteps and become a thorn in Iron Man's side. With Obadiah Stane setting the precedent for misappropriating Tony Stark's technology, Zeke could easily carry on this trend and cause trouble for our hero. If Marvel decides to introduce a character like Morgan, who can inherit the Iron Man mantle, it sets the stage for an intriguing clash between the offspring of Tony Stark and his old nemesis Zeke Stane. This familial rivalry could add a personal dimension to their conflict, making Zeke a formidable foe for Iron Man to contend with in future MCU installments. Well, that's it for today. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for regular updates. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching the video, and we'll catch you in the next one.